The day commenced like any typical day. I was seated in our comfortable living room, mindlessly scrolling through my phone. Upon hearing the sound of a car arriving outside, I noted it was well past midnight. I was certain it was her. My wife Amy had been on a business trip for the past 3 days. The trip was unremarkable, as her occupation frequently necessitated travel. What was peculiar, however, was the excessively cheerful tone in her texts. This time, the door flung open, revealing her presence. She stood in the doorway, holding her suitcase in one hand and her phone in the other, her face radiating with joy. A type of joy I had not witnessed in a considerable duration. She was laughing about something, either a joke or a message on her device. For a brief while, I speculated that she may have experienced an exceptionally rewarding vacation, perhaps a fruitful meeting, or received positive news. I nearly smiled upon seeing her in such high spirits, as her supervisor remarked, "Hey, honey." Her voice was effervescent as she removed her heels and placed her bag by the door. You would not believe how absurd this is. The trip had interminable meetings, although we successfully delivered the presentation. It will be significant for the company. I nodded and offered her a slight smile. That's excellent, Amy. It appears that it was successful. She confirmed this while smiling and retrieving her. I began typing on my phone, and the cuisine at the establishment to which we were taken was extraordinary, akin to Michelin star quality. I observed her as she spoke incessantly, noting the radiance on her visage. There was an indefinable quality about her that was beyond my comprehension. I could not exactly identify her energy, which was nearly overwhelming, and then there was her laughter. She incessantly giggled at her phone. A carefree chuckle, unfamiliar for years, elicited a brief pang of emotion. I experienced jealousy, not because she was happy, but because I wasn't the source of that emotion. I rose and I approached her and offered a gentle embrace, remarking, "You appear quite content. Perhaps I might assign you further business trips." She chuckled once more, yet it. She appeared anxious this time, perhaps, as she distanced herself to retrieve her suitcase. I will quickly unpack as she approached our bedroom. Something within me felt amiss, perhaps because of her demeanor. She averted her gaze and clutched her phone as if it had a significant secret. Could not dispel the notion that her enthusiasm stemmed from factors beyond a prosperous business trip when she vanished into the bedroom as I remained in the living room, gazing at the vacant doorway. It was then that I observed something peculiar. Her laughter had ceased, and indeed, the entire house had as well. The atmosphere became unsettlingly still, and my curiosity compelled me to proceed further. The carpet in the bedroom muffled my footsteps as I walked to the door and listened to her. She muttered under her breath, "No, no, no," her voice tinged with panic. This cannot be occurring at this moment. I glanced inside and observed her seated on the edge of the bed, her luggage open before her. She was clutching a piece of paper, her face had turned pale, and her previous smile had vanished. Had disappeared, supplanted by an expression of utter panic. Her hands were. She trembled as she gazed at the object she had discovered in her bag. "What is wrong?" I inquired, entering the room. In the room, she startled at the sound of my voice, hastily concealing the paper back inside her luggage, stating nothing. Her laughter was incongruent with the anxiety seen in her eyes. It was merely work-related matters that I addressed. "Eyebrow-related tasks indicate that you appear as though you have encountered a specter." She shook her head in response, closing her eyes. The luggage slid shut with a loud crack. "I'm fine," she stated, rising and brushing past. "I am fatigued. I will discuss it with you tomorrow, if that is acceptable, before I can articulate further." She exited the room and proceeded towards the bathroom, at which point the door slammed shut, leaving me standing alone. They were perplexed and increasingly wary. Something was amiss, as my intuition said. She was vociferously accusing me of concealing something, and I realized I would not attain peace until I uncovered the truth. I performed an action I never anticipated. I waited until she was in the room, and then I opened her suitcase. What I discovered there sent a chill through me. I paused momentarily, gazing at the suitcase as though it were Pandora's box. My heart raced and my palms felt clammy. yet I was unable to restrain myself. To ascertain what she was so eager to conceal, I gradually unzipped the luggage and, upon lifting the cover, it initially appeared to be an ordinary travel bag containing clothing, toiletries and some folded documents. Nevertheless, as I delved more, I discovered something that my stomach churned at the sight of a meticulously wrapped gift box adorned with a red ribbon. Situated beneath her garments, it was not directed towards me. Indeed, there was no name present. The dimensions and form of the box immediately induced a sense of unease in me. Excessively personal and intimate, I cautiously opened it, my hands trembling. Inside was a sleek black lingerie ensemble significantly more seductive than any she had hitherto donned for me. My thoughts surged with inquires why she would pack such an item for a work trip and, more significantly, why I was not informed of it. Subsequently, I observed a diminutive card concealed inside the fabric's creases. My heart plummeted as I deciphered the inscribed phrases. Her handwriting, reserved for our moments of solitude, caused my chest to constrict, and I experienced a rush of nausea engulfed me. It was certain that this was not merely some. This inadvertent lapse served as evidence that my wife had been deceiving me. I sat on the edge of the bed, grasping the card in my hand as a multitude of thoughts inundated my head regarding our identity. It was someone from her office, someone she had encountered during this trip. I sought explanations, however, I realized I could not confront her without additional information. If I approached her now, she would only deny everything I required. Exercise prudence in this matter, I restored everything to its original state, securing the luggage and returning it to its designated location. She had abandoned it, prompting me to seize my phone and launch the browser in search of any information. My hand exhibited tremors so severe that I could scarcely type. I successfully accessed our joint phone account, and what I discovered further intensified my unease. Her call log was extensive. I did not recognize many of the numbers, particularly one with an extended call time. Specifically, it was notable as it had been called daily throughout her journey, occasionally many times. My pulse quickened as I entered the number into a reverse lookup website, and the result promptly indicated it belonged to a man named Ethan Wren. Was an unfamiliar name to me, yet the connotation was evident, whoever this individual was. He had been a crucial component of her work trip. I gazed at the name on the screen, attempting to comprehend it. Everything pertained to a coworker I had never encountered, possibly a client, or was he? I was reluctant to draw premature judgments. Nonetheless, the accumulating data was increasingly unfavorable. I heard the restroom door open, so I swiftly closed my phone and concealed it in my pocket as Amy entered. In the bedroom, her hair moist and her face devoid of makeup, she regarded me with an unusual blend of shame and she exhibited caution, as if she could perceive my awareness of anything amiss. "Are you all right?" she inquired, her tone excessively nonchalant. She observed my pallor as I feigned a smile, asserting that I was merely fatigued. She nodded, however, her gaze revealed concern. Remained with me for a little longer than required, then she ascended into bed and drew the covers up to her chin, closed. Her eyes remained unaffected as I reclined alongside her, gazing at the ceiling while my thoughts raced. Events that night prevented me from sleeping. I remained awake, unable to close my eyes. Upon seeing the card, the lingerie, and the name Ethan Reynolds, I realized I had to act. I needed to investigate further, although I was aware that I must not reveal to her that I was onto her, not at this moment. The initial light of morning permeated the curtains. I resolved to uncover the truth. Regardless of the potential discomfort, I seized my phone and commenced formulating strategies if she believed she could conceal this information from me, but she was in for an unpleasant surprise the following morning. I resolved to remain composed. I could not afford to alert her until I had gathered all the components of the situation. Amy awoke as if nothing had transpired. Humming a melody while preparing coffee in the kitchen, one might assume she possessed no concerns whatsoever. However, I could not disregard the panic on her face from the previous night. It tormented me during breakfast as I attempted to reach her. I inquired nonchalantly while sipping my coffee, asking if there were any intriguing stories from the trip. She paused momentarily before presenting her customary smile, stating nonchalantly, "Not really," while shrugging. It primarily consisted of work-related meetings, presentations, and the customary activities. It was not enjoyable. She must have found it exhausting to nod and feign belief in her statements. She glanced at her phone. It was worthwhile, as the client appreciated our pitch, and we may finalize the sale next week. The response was excessively slick. I recognized her deception but chose not to pursue it further. Instead, I concentrated on my strategy. I required additional evidence. I required access to her phone. She proceeded to the shower after breakfast. Leaving her phone on the kitchen counter, my heart raced as I seized it and accessed its contents. She had consistently exhibited carelessness. Her passcode, however, was still our wedding date. I swiftly accessed her texts. Her fingers trembled as she discovered a series of messages exchanged between herself and Ethan Reynolds. My stomach knotted as I read the messages. "Amy, I cannot cease contemplating this weekend." It was flawless. "Ethan, you. I miss you already, Amy. I despise the subterfuge, but it is necessary." It was worth it. I felt like the room was cleared, and the signals were clear. During her purported business trip, my chest constricted as I continued to browse, discovering selfies she had sent him. She was clad in the same black lingerie, and I could no longer bear to look at her. I secured the phone and returned it precisely to its original location. When she emerged from the shower, I feigned ignorance. "I am departing momentarily," having stated this while retrieving my keys, "as I need to attend to some errands." She acknowledged the errands with minimal attention to her phone, stating, "See you later," as I drove away. I experienced a combination of fury, sadness, and determination. I was not the type of person to succumb. It is uncharacteristic for me to overlook such matters. However, I also recognize that I require a degree of impulsiveness. In a systematic manner to ensure I did not confront her unprepared, I stopped in a secluded parking lot and made a call. I never anticipated using a private investigator, yet exigent circumstances necessitated it. For Des, the investigator, a man named Jack, listened attentively as I spoke. I described my predicament, and he stated that he would take the case, requesting her schedule. Information regarding this individual and access to any available resources, including emails, phone records, and social media, as I have provided him with everything. Including the messages I had observed that morning, Jack assured me he would commence digging immediately and pledged to maintain communication. Upon concluding the call, I experienced a slight sense of relief, as I was now taking action. Over the subsequent days, I feigned normalcy, laughing at Amy's jokes and attentively listening to her narratives. I even kissed her goodnight, fully aware of my knowledge. It was the most challenging act I had ever performed, yet I continually reminded myself. I reassured myself that the truth was worth the wait. Then one evening, Jack called. "We've got." His tone was serious when he remarked, "You will want to see this." The phone conversation from Jack had left me feeling apprehensive. He refrained from elaborating, merely stating that he possessed something I needed to observe and insisted on an in-person meeting that evening. Amy reclined on the couch, engrossed in her phone, prompting me to ponder how she could remain so still. Serenely concealing a significant betrayal behind every grin and easygoing demeanor. The statement from her felt like another twist of the knife. However, I fulfilled my role. Feigned tranquility despite the escalating tempest within me that became increasingly difficult to suppress. In the morning, I fabricated a pretext regarding a last-minute work appointment and departed to rendezvous with Jack at a modest diner on the periphery. Upon my arrival in town, he was already present, with a manila folder positioned on the table before him. My heart raced as I settled into the booth opposite him. "You're not going to like this," Jack stated, his tone low and grave. He shoved the packet toward me, his attitude grim, stating that I needed to see it. With shaky hands, I opened the folder. The first thing I observed was a sequence of images, grainy yet clear enough to discern. Among the faces, I observed Amy laughing, leaning toward a man I recognized. Ethan Reynolds was seated with another individual at what appeared to be a hotel bar, as indicated by their body language. One photo definitely depicted intimacy, showing Ethan with his hand on her thigh. They were depicted holding hands as they entered the hotel elevator. My gut churned. However, the worst was yet to come. Jack indicated a USB disk concealed within the folder, stating, "There is additional content here, surveillance footage from the hotel affirms all details. I was unable to watch it there." In the center of the cafe, merely observing the photographs incited a surge of anger within me. I inquired, "How long has this been occurring?" My voice is scarcely audible, as I have discerned over the course of several months. Jack indicated that they had been meeting often whenever she traveled for work, suggesting that this is not an isolated incident. She had been undermining the foundation for months, lying to me and secretly interacting with this person. Remained at home, relying on her affection. The betrayal was insurmountable, yet I persevered. To maintain my composure, I required clarity of thought. "What additional information did you uncover?" I inquired. Jack hesitated, stating, "There's one more thing," as he retrieved a printed document. The folder contains a booking confirmation for a weekend break for her and Ethan. Another trip is scheduled in 2 weeks. It appears they are traveling to a resort in Miami. My hands are clenched into fists as She gazed at the page, unperturbed, as she was already strategizing her next rendezvous. The audacity of it was striking. My fury boiled, yet I suppressed my rage. If I were to meet her, I required composure. To proceed on my terms, I had to ensure there was no possibility for her to evade this. "Thank you, Jack," I stated. Despite the internal turmoil, my voice remains firm. "You have surpassed all expectations." He nodded, offering me a sympathetic glance. "If you require anything else, simply phone. I regret that you are experiencing this." I departed the diner with the folder and the USB drive secured. Under my arm, I felt like to a guy bearing the weight of the earth, yet simultaneously had an unusual sensation of clarity. This was not. Despite prolonged speculation or conjecture, I possessed the truth, unequivocal and irrefutable. It was now time to determine the course of action. That evening, I sat in my car in a deserted parking lot, gazing at the surroundings. With the USB drive in my possession, I saw the necessity of reviewing the footage, while a part of me was apprehensive about the potential discoveries. Nevertheless, I proceeded. I was unable to avert my gaze as I connected the disk to my laptop and accessed the contents, which were time-stamped and organized. In chronological order, the initial footage depicted Amy and Ethan encountering each other in the hotel foyer, their expressions illuminating with joy. The next scene showed them laughing and talking in the bar like a honeymoon couple. Subsequently, there was the elevator tape, which captured a few seconds of their kiss before the doors closed. My chest constricted as I advanced to the concluding footage depicting their entrance into a hotel room together, with the timestamp indicating it was late at night. They did not emerge until dawn. I shut the laptop and reclined in my seat, feeling as though I had been struck. The information was compelling, yet it also instilled in me an unusual sense of empowerment. For the first time in days, I felt invigorated. I possessed the advantage. She believed she could conceal this, but I now had all the necessary evidence to reveal the truth. Confronting her was insufficient. I desired for her to comprehend the gravity of her actions, yet I also aimed to approach it in a particular manner. This allowed no space for justifications or refutations. "She had deceived me, I believed you." She referenced Miami a few weeks prior, and her reaction was invaluable. Her palm clenched around the mug, and for a brief time, she resembled a deer caught in headlights. However, that remains unverified. She stammered, "I will inform you if it occurs." "Very well," I replied, feigning a smile. "Please do keep me updated." Her uncomfortable laughter conveyed all the information I required. Over the subsequent days, I maintaining a poker face and feigning normalcy while discreetly preparing for my confrontation, I created a backup of all I have gathered proof in the form of images, texts, and videos and stored them on several devices. I even printed some crucial screenshots as a precaution in case this situation did not escalate. I sought incontrovertible evidence that would leave her no opportunity to evade responsibility. An ideal chance arose one evening while she was scrolling through her phone on the couch, prompting me to recall a past memory. "Do you recall when we used to watch those true crime shows together?" I inquired, maintaining a light tone, as she looked up. Smiling, I recall those enjoyable moments. I was contemplating that we should view something similar. Once more, observe how individuals solve mysteries and expose secrets that I permit. My comments linger in the atmosphere as I see her response. Her smile diminished somewhat and she shifted uneasily, asserting that perhaps at some point, her voice strained. I had instilled sufficient uncertainty to render her apprehensive, and now it was time to execute the last revelation. The subsequent night, I prepared the setting and requested her to have a seat with me. I was in the living room informing her of my desire to engage in a serious discussion. She was intrigued but not excessively worried. Unaware of what was forthcoming, she seated herself as I positioned the manila folder on the coffee table between us. Her gaze quickly shifted to it. I saw a subtle spark of panic in her expression. Inquired in a tremulous voice, "There is something I need to show you," I stated, maintaining a composed tone. "Before proceeding, I must inquire if there is anything you wish to convey to me, Amy." She became immobilized, her complexion paling. "What do you mean by that?" "I understand precisely what I mean." I spoke this with a voice that was both firm and composed. "I am offering you one. Now is the opportunity for you to be truthful with me if there is something you have been concealing." Her lips opened, but no words emerged. She appeared to be attempting to formulate a justification, yet nothing materialized when she failed to do so. I opened the folder and handed the photographs over the table, stating, "These are from your business trip," my voice resonating. "It is cooler now." She recognized them, her eyes widening as she gazed at the photographs. Her hands trembled. "I can explain," she began. "Oh, I'm certain you can," I replied. Interrupting her, however, prior to doing so, "You may wish to see this." I retrieved my. She utilized the laptop to play the elevator footage, and the color drained from her face entirely. "It is not as it appears." She muttered, "It's precisely as it appears." I retorted, "You deceived me. You betrayed me, believing you could evade consequences." She began to reply, but I interrupted. "I am aware of. Ethan, I am well informed about Miami. Amy, please inform me of the duration of our stay. Are you intending to maintain this behavior, or were you merely anticipating my discovery?" Tears filled her eyes, although I remained unaffected. The slightest semblance of pity was unwarranted. This was not a moment for sympathy, but rather a moment for her to confront the repercussions of her actions. Amy remained still, gazing at the facts presented before her, tears streaming down her face. Her eyes overflowed, yet I remained unmoved. This was not the moment for her feigned sorrow. I pursued the unadulterated reality. Unfiltered and unapologetic, she muttered, "I am sorry," her voice trembling. It occurred spontaneously. I reclined in my chair and crossed my arms. "That is the best you can provide, Amy. Affairs do not occur spontaneously. You acted with intention. You deceived me on your plans, engaged in covert activities, and do not insult my intelligence by feigning innocence. It was an unfortunate incident." She gazed at her hands, intertwining her fingers as if that action could alleviate the burden of. She expressed regret for the extent of her actions, stating, "I didn't intend for it to escalate this far." My voice escalated as I confronted you about your clandestine involvement with this individual for several months. Are you already organizing another vacation to Miami with him? How far do you intend to pursue this? Eloped with him, abandoning me like yesterday's refuse. She shook her head vehemently, her voice escalating in desperation. "No. I assure you, I had no intention of departing. I merely, what exactly did you mean?" I interrupted by pounding my hand on the table, seeking a modicum of thrill and something distinct. Was I insufficient? Her stillness was overwhelming. She could not even meet my gaze, and that was even more telling. More than anything else, it confirmed the response I had long known. For a prolonged minute, none of us uttered a word, burdened by the gravity of it all. Weighed heavily in the air, smothering, ultimately, she shattered the silence. I have ceased to love you, she uttered, her voice scarcely perceptible. I emitted a sardonic laugh. One does not breach the trust of a loved one, Amy. One does not deceive them and clandestinely retreat to hotels with others. If you truly love someone else, spare me your excuses, since I do not believe them. Her sobs intensified, and she concealed herself. She buried her face in her hands and wailed, I do not understand why I acted that way. I was foolish and selfish. I was not contemplating sufficiently, which is evident. I stated this coldly, but now it is time for reflection. Amy, this will not conclude with your tears and my forgiveness. There are repercussions for your actions. She gazed up at me, dread evident in her tear-streaked eyes. What do you mean? She asked. I mean this, I replied, producing I am placing a stack of printed screenshots on the table, which I will then submit to our lawyer for filing. Upon hearing the word divorce, her jaw fell, and for a while, she appeared incredulous. Wait, no, she exclaimed. Extend your hand, we can navigate this together. Kindly grant me an opportunity. I withdrew my hand, shaking my head. You cannot rectify the situation after months of deceit and infidelity. Amy, you have obliterated any opportunity we had to resolve this. I can no longer trust you, and without trust, there is nothing remaining. Her tears intensified. However, I resisted the urge to experience emotion. She was culpable, this was her predicament, her treachery, and she must confront the repercussions. Stood up, seizing the folder and laptop. I will be residing in a motel tonight. My voice resolute, I stated that I require room to determine my subsequent actions. You may remain. Do not anticipate a return to normalcy. This signifies the commencement of the conclusion. As I began to depart, she cried out to me. Following her, with her voice trembling, she pleaded, please do not proceed with this. I will do anything at all. I hesitated at the door, casting a final glance back at her. The sight of her brokenness and despair should have caused me pain, yet I felt only numbness. The moment you chose him over me, he left. Exited, securing the door behind me. I drove aimlessly for hours attempting to clarify my thoughts. The emotions within me were a detrimental amalgamation of wrath, deception and anguish. I never envisioned my life culminating in this manner. Overwhelmed by betrayal from the individual I trusted most, Amy's appeals still resonated in my mind. Her indifference exacerbated my anger. She was concerned solely with her own interests. I arrived at the parking lot of a modest rural motel, which was cheap, run down, and exactly what I had expected. I required a location to be solitary, away from her, so I signed in and sat down. Over the edge of the bed, I gazed over the folder I had brought, reopening it to sift through the material once more. The photograph, together with every message in detail, reinforced my decision. There was no doubt. Amy had transgressed a boundary that could not be retracted. The following morning, I contacted a divorce attorney named Alan, who was highly recommended by a colleague. He listened to everything regarding Amy, the affair, and the evidence I possessed. Without judgment, I presented my ideas, supported by the evidence. Alan stated that this may be uncomplicated, but it is contingent upon your desires. Are you seeking a definitive separation or something more? I have contemplated this extensively. At that moment, a part of me desired retribution to inflict upon Amy the same anguish she had caused me. However, another part of me yearned for closure. I voiced my wish for a final separation, but I refused to let her go. She must accept accountability for her actions. Alan acknowledged this, stating it was reasonable, and we will commence drafting. Do you have temporary accommodation? Yes, I said it. The motel scarcely resembled a suitable accommodation. I will cope after concluding the call, I experienced For the first time in days, I experienced an unusual sensation of relief. I had a purpose and was no longer aimless. While immersed in my despair, I took action. Later that day, I received a call from. He said in a serious tone, Jack, there's something you need to know about Ethan's wife. When I found out about the romance, I was shocked to learn that he is actually married to Jack. He stated that his wife is reacting poorly, threatening to go public if Amy does not withdraw. A bitter laugh escaped him. The irony was nearly overwhelming. Amy was not merely undermining our marriage, she was adversely affecting another individual's life. I suggested that perhaps Amy should disclose this publicly. Have the sensation of her world disintegrating. The subsequent days were chaotic, however not in the. Alan expedited the divorce proceedings, and I assured that all necessary preparations were in place, while Amy attended to her own matters. She appeared as a mere shell of her former self. Her confident, vivacious personality had dissipated, supplanted by a silent desperation. Despite her attempts to apologize once more, I remained resolute. I can no longer continue this, Amy. During one of our recent chats, I informed her that I deserve better. She made her choices, and now she must accept the consequences. I have finished being your safety net. Her tears no longer affect me. Endured excessive restless evenings lamenting the life I believed we possessed, and now I was prepared to relinquish it. The divorce proceedings were unexpectedly seamless due to the evidence I possessed. Amy did not contest my claims. We divided our assets equitably, and I retained possession of the house, while Ethan received the remainder. It was revealed that the wife publicly disclosed the affair, resulting in severe repercussions for both Amy and Ethan. My concern is no longer relevant, yet, what astonished me the most was the liberating sensation it evoked. Release the anger and betrayal. I have come to understand that I invested years in a relationship that lacked the solidity I perceived. I believed that losing Amy was not the conclusion of my existence, but rather a new commencement. I immersed myself in reconstructing my life, re-establishing connections with old acquaintances, and resuming hobbies I had long overlooked. I began prioritizing my own happiness for the first time in years. It was challenging, and there were still instances when the discomfort re-emerged, but those instances were becoming increasingly infrequent. One evening, several months later, I discovered. At a coffee shop, I was reading a book and savoring the tranquility when I encountered someone named Rachel, who was seated nearby. The individual at the adjacent table is straining to balance her coffee cup and laptop. I am willing to assist her. She inquired with a smile, laughing as her eyes brightened. Thank you, I assure you I am typically more planned than this. We commenced our conversation, and before I realized it, hours had elapsed. Rachel was amiable, humorous, and approachable throughout our initial interaction. For an extended period, I experienced a glimmer of hope when we exchanged contact information and bid farewell that evening. I came to a realization. Amy's betrayal had caused pain, yet it had not obliterated me. I was no longer shattered. I was more robust, now possessing greater confidence in my identity and aspirations in life. It did not signify the act of forgetting past events, rather, it entailed the decision to concentrate on the future rather than the past. Upon exiting the coffee shop, I felt unburdened, liberated, and prepared to encounter new experiences. Subsequent events may compel one to reassess, since life occasionally presents unexpected challenges. Ultimately, such struggles can culminate in something superior if one permits them. My narrative did not conclude with. The betrayal culminated in a new beginning, for which I am thankful.